The first R-rated movie I saw in a theater was The Last of the Mohicans. Yeah, and there's some sensuality there that I remember I would have been 9 maybe when that came out, and my dad being like, "Do you know what's going on in this scene?" And I'm like, "They're kissing, right?" And he's like, "Good. Yeah, they're just kissing."
Welcome to the American Cinematheque Podcast, the show where guests program the film festival of their lives. Joining us today is a director. You know his work on films like Ain't Them Body Saints, The Old Man and the Gun, A Ghost Story, The Green Knight, and in theaters now, Mother Mary. Programming the David Lowery Film Festival, it's David Lowery.
Thank you for having me. This is incredibly daunting because we have so few slots.
Yes, there are 8 slots behind you. To really get to know who you are, we need to know your relationship to popcorn, candy, and the movies.
Yes.
What is your movie theater ritual? When you go to see the movies, what do you do?
I try to sit close to the front,
Okay.
a little bit off center,
Mm-hmm.
and it depends on what auditorium it is, but the seating is very important. Depends on my mood what I eat. I don't eat candy.
Mm-hmm.
I love popcorn. I try not to eat too much popcorn. I'm trying to cut back a little bit to keep my cholesterol down. If I'm not getting coffee not getting popcorn, I get coffee and tea.
Mm-hmm.
And so not the most exciting of options, but yeah, nothing better than going to a movie theater, sitting down in the front row with a big tub of popcorn.
So what makes you go closer? You're what, a few rows back?
Yeah, like depending on sometimes I'll be in the front row.
Wow.
Like some cinemas really make the front row feel, and I found that out by accident. I think when I was going to a sold out screening of something, it might have been Pearl Harbor, the Michael Bay movie, opening night. and the thing was that, and I was like, this is kind of awesome.
Wow.
But yeah, so sometimes I will just, if there's enough space between the screen and the front seats, I'll sit in the front.
And what's the perfect time?
The best time to go see movies is like 11 a.m. I almost never treat myself to that because of life. But an 11 a.m. movie is just heaven. Starting the day off that way.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about day to night? You go to see a movie in the day and it turns at night when you come out.
That's magical. I love that. That transition, it really kind of like adds to that dreamy sense that a movie can afford you. Like you really get that, since you've entered some new space and come out a new person, it's one of the best feelings ever. And I'm not a summer person. I don't like the heat, but that feeling in the summer when you leave and the sun's baking down on you, you go into the cool movie theater, when you come out, the sun's gone down, it's a little bit cooler. It's just happy.
Yeah. You've been somewhere. Where did you grow up?
I mostly grew up in Dallas, Texas. And prior to that, I was in Waukesha, Wisconsin, which is where I first saw movies I first discovered what movies were.
Yeah.
But at this point, I've been in Texas long enough that that's basically where I grew up.
Do you remember your first moment of going into a theater or of your formative movie?
Very first movie was Pinocchio.
Oh, wow.
Which was re-released 83 or 4.
Sounds right.
Something like that. And I remember the movie very specifically, but I've seen it many times since then. So like sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm remembering my memory of seeing that movie or if it's just like the memory since then. But there was a standee of the Blue Fairy in the lobby, and her arm was on a little cardboard mechanical arm that was going up and down like that. And I fell in love with movies, but I also fell in love with her. I was madly in love with the Blue Fairy as a 3-year-old. And so that was my memory. Like all of a sudden movie theaters were a very special place to go. I loved the act of going to the cinema.
Wow.
And then E.T. was re-released in 1985. So I would have been 4 years old. That I remember everything about that. It was the Brook, and both of these were at the, I think now shuttered Brookfield Mall in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Or I think the mall is still there, but the theater is probably changed into something else. And that was like a really transformative experience for me.
Wow, I think we've discovered something that makes sense.
Yes.
That your first love was the Blue Fairy?
Yes. I was in love with the Blue Fairy. Yep. First crush.
And so this is the first time we're talking about this, but movie standees, to me, they were so important when I was younger. They were these magical things. Can you talk a minute about that?
They really are. I worked at a movie theater for an incredibly long period of my life, and I would take standees home.
Yeah.
And my parents' house was just full of standees because I thought they were so cool. Every now and then you'd get one that was really complex. Like a lot of thought was put into it. They're like huge dioramas.
Yeah.
The one that I wish I had was the Lost Highway standee, which was a road sign with a flashing yellow light. And I'd mentioned this to someone else recently, and then it went up for auction. And I forgot to put a bid in, but I would have loved to have had that.
The magic of cardboard. It's just cardboard.
Well,
with
that one was the
something-
literal plastic. Like,
Oh,
really, like
wow.
they went to wherever you get highway road signs and bought a bunch of them, and turned them into standees. But then the cardboard ones, I brought home from the movie theater a standee of Will Ferrell from Elf, where he's just standing there with his arms spread wide. And I would hide it around the house, like in the shower or other places, and you could always just I get, scare the crap out of my siblings.
I had Danny DeVito and War of the Roses in my house.
Oh,
so-
amazing, amazing.
so we could have traded. So behind you, let's get to why we are
Yes.
here. We are here to program the David Lowery Film Festival. Behind you are 8 showtimes. You can change them as we go along. Nothing is locked in. We have opening night, family matinee, midnight movie, secret screening, double feature, audience award, dream screening, and closing night. You're going to program these out of the most formative personal movie-going experiences. Nothing is locked in. There are no rules. So we have 2 excellent choices so far. You mentioned E.T.
Yeah.
and you mentioned Pinocchio.
And both of those could fit in either one of those first 2 slots. It's
Yeah.
like a tricky one.
Now we can put them up now. You can wait. You can move around.
Let's start with E.T. is opening night.
Opening night E.T.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start.
And that's because what was the connection when you saw E.T.?
Well, one of the things that was most meaningful to me about that movie was how much it scared me and how much it made me cry. And at a very young age, well, I didn't realize this at the time, but feeling those emotions was really beneficial. I had never reckoned with things that I was reckoning with when I saw E.T., including death, the idea of E.T. dying,
Yeah.
and feeling those feelings in a very palpable way was really, it's something that I think about a lot when I'm making movies now, especially movies for kids, is that you have to be very gentle and delicate, but you can also pave the way for them to understand their own emotional journeys. And E.T. certainly did that for me.
And Pete's Dragon, he's an orphan.
Definitely.
You know? And so did you do a lot of thinking about E.T. going into Pete's
Definitely.
Dragon?
I mean, when I first was afforded the opportunity to work on Pete's Dragon, I thought, what a gift to get to make a movie that maybe in the best case scenario will work for someone the way E.T. did for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't go back and look at it because they were clearly not one-to-one, but certainly that was on our mind a lot. It's the high watermark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. For opening night, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. All right. Opening night is E.T. the Extraterrestrial. We still have Pinocchio out there somewhere. So as you're in Milwaukee here
Yeah.
seeing these, what was your next journey? And can you describe, did you go with your family often? And what is the size of your family?
Well, at that point, it was me and my mom and my dad and maybe one brother.
Okay.
I went to Pinocchio with my mom and my dad. E.T. was just my dad. I now have 8 siblings. The family just kept growing. And so when it's weird, I can't really remember a time without all of them. So when I think back, I was like, oh yeah, it was really just subconsciously, I'm sure I do. There's a lot of stuff like that my therapist will help me extract about what it was like to be an only child who soon had many, many, many siblings. But those early movie-going of memories were, it was me and my parents. It felt very singularly us.
So you were the eldest. Were you like, we're going to this? Were you like the boss of picking the movies?
No, I think they picked those.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew what they were.
Yeah.
I'm sure I knew what Pinocchio was because I would have had books or things like that. But I was so young. I'm getting those glimmers of things, but I can't quite remember it. E.T. I certainly didn't know, but I knew what aliens were. Like
Yeah.
I was really into them. I was into spaceships. By that point, I would have known what Star Wars was.
Right.
Star Wars was not a theatrical experience for me. So it can't be included. I'm depriving myself of Star Wars. But that was the big one.
Yeah.
And so I knew who George Lucas was by the time I was 5 years old, certainly. I'm sure I knew who Steven Spielberg was
Right.
as a result of that. And I had all of the Star Wars toys, I had all of the books, but I didn't have a way to see the movies. And because we didn't have a TV or VCR when I was growing up. So it wasn't until maybe around the same time I saw E.T., probably like 5 or 6, that my grandparents taped it off television and showed me, I think, the first 2.
Yeah.
Definitely the first one, but then Empire came shortly thereafter.
At that time, we had these little talisman, these action figures, and we'd recreate all of the...
And I knew every scene. I knew all
Yeah.
the dialogue. I knew and by that point, Return of the Jedi had come out. So I had the whole trilogy. I knew every twist. There was no surprises for me. when I saw the movie, it was like, "Oh, yes, that's the thing that I know." It was so familiar to me already. There were no except for the only thing that surprised me was that in the storybooks, all the photography was well, on the VHS tapes taped off of television, it was pan and scan.
Mhm.
And so you have this scene of C-3PO wandering through the deserts of Tatooine, and I was like, "There's supposed to be a giant skeleton of a sandworm in the background, and it's not there. Like, why isn't that there?" And it
Yeah.
totally I was like, "This doesn't make sense. Like, something's missing."
Yeah.
And finally, in 1997, I saw the special editions. First time I'd seen it in widescreen, I was like, "Ah, yes, of
There
course,
it
there it
is.
is."
So, and you moved from Milwaukee to Texas?
Yeah, to Dallas.
Is that your next real formative movie-going experience, or?
I think there's one more
Mhm.
before then that is related to Star Wars because it's a George Lucas property,
Okay.
and that would be Willow. Willow was and is a huge deal to me,
Wow.
and I w by that point, I knew who George Lucas was. He was my hero.
Mhm.
My mom told me there's a new George Lucas movie coming out. She didn't give credit to Ron Howard, who deserves it,
Yeah.
but, I was like, "Great, I'm there, like, I have to go see this," and this was the first time I would have ever gone to see a first run movie opening weekend,
Mhm.
and my grandmother took me. She took me and my brother Daniel and maybe my brother Benjamin, who was no, he wouldn't have been, he was a baby at that point. So it's me and my brother Daniel.
Yeah.
We go in, I'm so excited, I'm very nervous because of how excited I am about it, and I sit down, I'm ready to watch the movie, but I'm, like, scared of all the things that I think might happen. I'm also a very I still am, we'll get to this. I'm I get scared easily.
Uh-huh.
I love horror movies, but I can't watch them. So at that age, I was just nervous about being scared.
Mhm.
I was really worried something might upset me or scare me, but I was so thrilled, just butterflies in my stomach. And going along, at some point, Willow Ufgood's wife says the baby's feeling sick, and I'm like, "Oh no, the baby's sick?" Because I have a horrible, at this age, phobia of vomit. I can't handle it.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, "Oh no, what's gonna happen? Is there gonna be a throwing up scene?" And then sure enough, like 10 minutes later, Elora Danan upchucks and burgle cuts face, and I have to leave the theater. And I didn't see the movie until I was 14.
Wow.
Again, I didn't see the rest of it on
Yeah.
tape. And in spite of that, that movie, again, I had all the toys.
Yeah.
I still do. And I had the sticker book. I had the storybook. I had the Jello put out a Willow cookbook, which was just full of Jello themed Willow themed Jello recipes. I had that. So I knew the movie again backwards and forwards, including scenes that were deleted from the theatrical cut because they were in the storybooks and things
Mhm.
like that. But I didn't actually see the finished or the full movie until I was much older.
Wow, and that was very early on, that scene, right, in the
It's
movie?
very early on.
Yeah.
It's like within minutes of leaving on their adventure. So I saw none of the quest.
So you were then like, you had to reimagine and kind of direct the movie in your head. What was this movie that I saw? And you're piecing it together with Jello cookbooks and
Yeah. And the
storybooks.
other thing is I was really into film scores, and the Willow score by James Horner, one of James Horner's best. And I had it on cassette tape, and my brothers and I would just like play the entire movie out in the backyard with wooden swords, humming the soundtrack as we played. So like all of that is just so baked into me by the time I see the movie that when I do see the movie, it's not that different from what I had been imagining for at that point nearly a decade, maybe more than a decade,
Yeah.
I think.
And did Val Kilmer, was it Mad Mardigan? Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
it? Did that live up to your dreams?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
By that point, I was, made heroes of these actors early on, even though I wasn't allowed to see most of their movies. And so Val Kilmer, I knew about Top Secret. I
Mhm.
knew about The Doors. Certainly moving to Dallas in 1988, Oliver Stone was a unavoidable presence.
Yeah.
The Doors wasn't shot there, but of course, like it was part of that period where he was spending a lot of time shooting movies in Dallas. So all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh, Mad Mardigan's in a movie with the guy who makes movies in Dallas, and it's looks really cool." And so he was a big deal to me.
Have you ever got to talk to, Ron Howard? 'Cause the movie notoriously kind of bombed for
Yeah.
how big it was,
Yeah,
but you're the ultimate super fan of it, like, it altered you. Have you ever been able to speak to
I
him
have,
about it?
yes,
Yeah.
and it is I could just annoy him to no end about that movie, and I think it was frustrating. I mean, for me, looking now, I can see why it was frustrating because it bombed.
Yeah.
It was a really challenging shoot, and it takes people it's taken people a long time to reclaim it,
Mhm.
but I will sing its praises. I have been singing its praises for decades, but now it's like, It's way up there for
There's
me,
a 70mm print out there that still exists.
which I have
of
not
it.
seen.
We'll have to have you out. Come introduce that someday.
Let's do that,
Yeah.
and then have a Q&A with Ron afterwards,
Yeah.
and it will last for 3 hours.
Let's do it. We're gonna put it on the board.
We put it on the board for family movie night because I think it's a great, in spite of, unless you're afraid of vomiting, it's a great family movie.
And you have a very long intermission that lasts like a decade. How long's the intermission between the vomit scene and when you saw it?
For me, I think it was, how old would I have been? Let's say 10 years.
Yeah, so there's like a 10-year
it's a 10-year
intermission.
gap there. Yep. Which is unfair because there's a lot that goes on in those 10 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, family matinee, Willow. That's great. Stand By Me. Did you avoid Stand By Me?
Stand By Me was an interesting one. By that point, we had a TV that we could bring out. We had kept it in a closet, but we could bring it out every now and then if we were sick and watch things. And it was on UPN 21 one night. And I maybe had read about it in Roger Ebert's movie Home Companion, but I didn't know that much about it. We didn't even see the whole thing. It was already en route, the movie was playing. And so it got to that scene with the leeches. And my brother got so freaked out by that, and he was like physically angry that we were watching this, and I just was like delighted. I thought it was hilarious, which it is.
Yeah.
And so that was my main memory of that, was just how angry he got at the leech scene. But that also was a big vomit one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And I suppose by that point, if I was 13 or 14, I could handle it.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to turn the movie off, but I definitely didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
Now I love it.
Yeah.
A good vomit gag makes me so happy, and I have not had enough in my own movies. But back then, it was anathema to me.
Do you remember the first time? So you that you said, "Oh, a person." Because you mentioned a little bit about maybe Spielberg or George Lucas. Is that the first time you remember someone makes films, or that's a career, or that's something you can do?
Definitely, and that's why I decided at the age of 7, I'm going to do this. It was very quick. Like, I don't know how. I remember my mother telling me about who George Lucas was. She went to the library and got a book about how Star Wars was made. I read that and was like, well, that's what I want to do. Yeah. And it was a very binary moment in my life. It was like everything before then, where I wanted to be a spaceman or Dracula or a fireman, like all of those things. Dracula was very high up on the list of what I wanted to be when I grew up. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, I want to make movies.
I would love to see a Dracula fireman. He'd be a perfect fireman, Dracula.
Actually. Only at night, though.
Yeah.
Those late night calls.
So you were this is all still in Milwaukee, or
so somewhere? Milwaukee was Willow.
Yeah.
And almost immediately after that, we would have moved to Texas, because Willow was 87, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah, I think.
And we moved to Texas in summer of 87. So that would have been the last movie I saw in Milwaukee for sure.
And then what were the theaters like? Did you immediately say, we need to find all the movie theaters in Texas?
Well, partially as a result of the growing family, my parents would not take us to first run movies. So we very quickly found the Chateau Theater, which was the dollar theater. Oh, nice. And that's where we saw everything for years. And it was always, however many months after the first, the initial release. It wasn't until, I think, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, Turtles in Time, that was a big deal to me because it was my birthday. I went to see that for my birthday, and we went opening day. And that was like the first time in a long time I'd seen a movie since Willow opening day.
And so who came to see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3? Was it was the family?
My memory is that my mom dropped me and like one friend off at the theater. It was at that age where you get dropped off at the theater.
What did you think of Ninja Turtles 3 at that time? Did you?
It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. I loved it.
Nice.
I have since gone back to all of them. Yeah. And Ninja Turtles 1, incredible. Yeah. It still holds up. Ninja Turtles 2,
Secret of the
Ooze. I watched it like maybe 10 years ago. I watched all of them 10 years ago and was thinking, this is a far cry from the first one. You can see the studio reacting to the parents' outcry over the violence and the darkness. It's much more kid-friendly. And I was like, oh, this just isn't as good.
Yeah.
But then 3 weeks ago, they did a 35th anniversary screening at cinemas across the nation, and I went to see it. And I was like, this is great. I'm so happy to be in a movie theater watching a 4K restoration of The Secret of the Ooze. Why was I ever mean to this movie? It's really good.
And lots of practical effects.
Tons of practical effects.
So all these movies, were you falling in love with practical effects at this
I wanted
time?
to do everything. I knew all of the model makers at ILM. I knew all of the matte painters. I've since gotten to meet some of them, which has been such a treat because I grew up just idolizing them.
Yeah.
Like Lauren Peterson or Greg Jean, like all of these guys who like built all of the, things that I played with as a kid. Like they built those spaceships, they built
Yeah.
everything, and all of that movie magic was so. I had a huge collection of books about visual effects, and maybe this still happens, but at that point, there were always books for children about how these things were done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have kids, so I don't know if there's still like a new series of those, but I've been going on eBay and kind of building a library of all of these books that were informative to me as a kid.
So what are those? That's basically how they did the effects for Star Wars as a book for a kid,
Or
or
just like visual effects and the history of visual effects in
wow.
general for children, and it's really great. It's really exciting.
It's amazing at that point. There's so many different touch points, either magazines or books, like supplements that you're trying to feed.
Yeah.
Did you have magazines that you
I
went
would
after?
I would go to the mall sometimes with my parents,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just hang out in Walden Books
Oh,
and read Starlog and Fangoria. They wouldn't buy them for me, but I'd read them there. Every now and then, we'd go to, like, a discount bookstore that would have a big magazine selection, and I'd get vintage issues of Starlog, so I had a handful of those, but it was really to keep up with the current and Cinefex. Cinefex was another
Mhm.
one that, at that point, you could find at bookstores and malls.
yeah. So we've mentioned a few other films so far: Pinocchio, Teenage
Yeah.
Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
I don't think Ninja Turtles 3 will go up there.
Okay,
I think it was a
it was a good party.
good, yeah, it was great. It was a great birthday party, but it's not gonna go up there.
All right, so you're in Texas. You're going to the Dollar Theater. Do you remember some other films that you saw at that point in time? Were you seeking out a specific genre?
I was never seeking out all movies, omnivorous. I wanted to see everything. I would go through the newspaper and look at the black and white ads of movies and show times of where they're playing. My mom and dad were hesitant to let us see R-rated movies,
Mhm.
but anything PG, but it was always a special occasion. It wasn't like we were going every week,
Yeah.
and like The Sandlot,
Mhm.
huge one at the Dollar Theater. The first R-rated movie I saw in a theater was The Last of the Mohicans,
Wow.
which is still, it's not the most representative of Michael Mann's work
Mhm.
as a whole, but it is still my favorite Michael Mann film. And that score, along with James Horner's score for Willow, was one of those ones on constant repeat in my house. One of my dad's students had been an extra in that movie, and so that's why we were allowed to go see it. We were like, "Let's go see it and see if we can spot Gus somewhere running through the woods."
Did you find Gus?
No, yeah.
So that's amazing because those are just for the violence of that film. It's early American violence.
Yeah, and there's some sensuality there that I remember being. I would have been 9 maybe when
Mhm.
that came out, and my dad being like, "Do you know what's going on in this scene?" And I'm like, "They're kissing, right?" And he's like, "Good. Yeah, they're just kissing."
So, what you said your dad's student. What did your father do?
He taught moral theology,
Oh, wow.
and for anyone, when they see Mother Mary,
Yeah.
that will come through loud and clear.
Yeah. All your films have a sense, a little bit of moral theology to it.
Yeah,
And
I mean, The Green Knight certainly does,
yeah.
and that movie, I went to the same university that my dad taught at, and the University of Dallas, and it's a Catholic university, and first, year you read all of the canon of Western literature, which ended with The Green Knight for us,
Mhm.
and so that certainly was a huge part of my upbringing, and it's starting to bubble up more and more in my work.
Yeah, there's references to books or like in Ghost Story when it falls out, Love in the
Yeah.
Time. Was books just as important since your father taught that? Did they go kind of were they?
Yeah, books were more important in our household,
Oh wow,
and again, we largely raised without television until I turned 16 and bought one of my own,
wow.
and but we could read anything. Nothing was off limits, and we were really encouraged to follow, whatever wherever, dark corners of the library that we wound up in, we could just check out anything. So I was reading Stephen King. I was reading Anne Rice at a very young age. I was reading lots of Shakespeare. I was
Mhm.
obsessed with Henry V, including Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, which would be up here if I had seen it in a theater, but I
Mhm.
did not.
The Great Saint Crispin's Day
The great
speech.
St. Crispin's Day speech, and then the post-battle dolly shot, which is, I mean, I still have never seen that movie on the big screen. Let's program that too
All
next
right,
to
let's
Willow.
do it.
Yeah.
So what would you say was the next, like maybe high school at this point, formative?
So I would say the next one, and this plays into the Dollar Theater of it
Yeah.
all, was The Crow.
Oh wow.
Edward Scissorhands, also, my dad took me to see that,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the first time I think I felt like I was seeing myself in a movie, which
Mhm.
sounds sort of a cliche to say, but I was like, "That movie looks the way I feel."
Mm.
And it was it after that, was like, I'm only going to dress in black from here on out. It was the beginning of my goth phase, which I still am kind of in. Still very much am in. And so Edward Scissorhands was huge to me. And at that point I shifted from George Lucas and Steven Spielberg being my idols to Tim Burton. I mean, I still love Lucas and Spielberg, but Tim Burton all of a sudden became my hero. But I want to talk about The Crow because that was a film that I was not allowed to go see, but I desperately wanted to. Everything about it was speaking to me. And there's like, you can see the correlation from Edward Scissorhands to The Crow. It's not a huge leap. So that was when I realized I have a bike. I know where the Dollar Theater is. I have some allowance money. I can go see The Crow myself. There was a tricky part about it being rated R. So I bought a ticket to Getting Even with Dad, the Macaulay Culkin film.
Ted Danson.
Yep. And was like, will this work? And it was a 3-screen theater. And I was like, they're going to be watching. I'm going to have to go to the restroom and then sneak in. And then no one cared, of course. And I went and saw The Crow. And that changed my life. I think The Crow became like my entire persona for the next, I would have been 13 at this time. So right at the age where you're trying to figure out who you are, your body's changing. You're like, what am I becoming? And I became the Crow.
That's your origin story.
Yeah.
Like The Crow. So you had a bike. What kind of bike did you have? Do you remember how far you had to go?
It was probably like a mile and a half.
Yeah.
And it was a route that I took it every weekend. I would just go see, all of a sudden the doors were cast open. I could just go see anything I wanted to. And then I would start riding my bike further and further to other movie theaters and having to do more chores around the house to get an allowance to go see more movies. But I was at that point, like I saw everything.
That bike. It was your gateway to all these films.
Yeah. That bike, which was the bike I got when I was 7. So at a certain point, like I was riding this tiny little bike that was way too small for me. And for some reason I never upgraded.
Heart racing.
I remember, I mean, this jumps ahead a little bit, but I had a Walkman and the Heat soundtrack I had on cassette. And I just remember riding while listening to like that Moby track and feeling like I am on top of the world here. I'm riding to go see a great movie, listening to the Heat soundtrack on cassette tape.
What a perfect moment in life.
Yeah.
On your bike, walking with Heat.
Yep.
Oh my God. So The Crow.
So The Crow a perfect midnight movie. It's just a perfect midnight movie.
All right, we're going to put The Crow up over Midnight Movie. All right, we've got 3 of the 8 programmed, 8 slots. We've got opening night E.T., family matinee Willow, midnight movie The Crow. That was your phase where you were into Tim Burton. It was the pale makeup, I guess. I was
definitely wearing pale makeup and would continue to do so for most of my tenure at high school once I started going to high school. And that was how I found myself. Those movies allowed me to figure out who I was because I always... I'm not going to be Han Solo. As a little kid, I wanted to be. I wanted to be Han Solo. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. I wanted to be Darth Vader. But all of a sudden, I mean, I'm not going to hopefully rise from the dead to avenge my loved ones. But something about The Crow and Edward Scissorhands allowed me to become myself.
Yeah. Wow. And when one's very dark, and the other one's very colorful.
It's really interesting to think about that. Like how much, for me, what I saw in Edward Scissorhands was the monochromatic goth castle, but that movie is wildly colorful. And going back, looking now and hearing about how they found that, I'm not a huge fan of Florida. It's just not my favorite climate. But like to know that one of my favorite movies was shot in Florida, when I learned that, I was like, oh, there's like something, the wiring in my brain is breaking.
So you're around 13, 14, 15 around then. And is there anything you just immediately want to put up on the board? Is there another part of your life that you might want to celebrate?
I think shortly there, it's funny because like so many of the big ones all occurred in this period where you are becoming who you are and you go see movies that inform who you were becoming. So there's a lot in this span of, let's say 13 to 21 that could all go up there. I was like going through my list and thinking at that theater, which was the AMC Irving 8. And
so right now we're celebrating the Milwaukee Mall.
Yeah.
And this Dollar Theater.
The Chateau Dollar Theater. And then the AMC Irving 8 was next to the Irving Mall where there was a general cinema. So I'd go back and forth, sometimes in the same day from those two. And then wound up working at one of them much later. I'd ride my bike to all of these theaters and I saw Dumb and Dumber, which was like the first time I ever cried laughing. And I just still to this day, that's like the high water mark for me. I saw Interview with the Vampire and was hit by a car immediately thereafter. crossing the street to go see another movie at the General Cinema, and somehow emerged unscathed.
Wow. Wait, so you were on the bike or
I
you were
wasn't
walking?
I locked my bike up at the mall movie
Uh-huh.
theater, walked across to see Interview with the Vampire at the AMC, was heading back to get my bike, and somehow probably just lost in thought thinking about Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise and
Yeah.
feeling feelings I'd never felt before. And a car plowed into me, and in my memory of this, I flew through the air and landed in the parking lot 30 feet away.
Wow.
Thinking back as an adult, I'm like, "Oh, clearly I was just knocked unconscious, and all the helpful bystanders moved me to that parking lot, and I come to, and everyone's, 'Are you okay?' And I'm like, 'Yeah, I'm fine.'" And I think about that scene in Short Cuts, and I'm like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
yeah, it's like, I was fine. I
Yeah.
have a scar on my pinky from that's all that happened, but I'm amazed that everyone let me walk away.
And that scene in Shortcuts always gets a laugh, and then
Yeah.
if you've seen it before, you're like, "Oh, no, you don't wanna laugh
Yes.
right now."
Yep.
Wow, so then you went to another movie then, or did you go home?
I had seen another I think I went home. I had seen another but I rode 2 miles home and was like, "Interview with the Vampire is great." Went and bought that soundtrack on cassette tape also, Elliot Goldenthal.
Put it in the Walkman and go.
Yeah, exactly. There was a sound warehouse across the street from the Irving 8, so I would often go if I had enough money and buy the soundtracks.
Alright, so what's the map? You've got the AMC there.
Yeah.
You've got the Sound Warehouse. Somewhere there's a Walden Books at a mall?
That Walden Books, which also had the General Cinema.
Yeah.
And across the freeway, maybe a mile away, was the Chateau. And then we are down by my house was near the Dallas Cowboys Stadium.
And those are all the important parts in that city.
Exactly, yeah. I remember when Metallica played at that stadium, we could hear it from our house.
Oh, wow.
But at the AMC 8, I had another really important formative experience, which it's almost too it's like putting Star Wars on the board. You wanna pick something a little less
Yeah, but
obvious,
if
but it's important, and
yeah.
it was Pulp Fiction.
Mhm.
And I didn't really know what that movie was. By that point, probably I'd go to the library and read Entertainment Weekly,
Yeah.
and so I kind of probably knew that it played at Cannes, was a very exciting movie. Maybe by that point, I'd heard Siskel and Ebert talk about it because I would sometimes get to see their show on PBS. And I have a very strange way of having seen this movie, which is that I went to go see The Shawshank Redemption because they opened the same weekend
Mhm.
and went into the wrong theater. No, Shawshank Redemption was going to be in that theater,
Mhm.
and I think I just went in early, and it was like Pulp Fiction was playing, and it was the climactic scene in the diner.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, I'm almost ashamed to see this. I saw the last reel of the movie first, but that reel did the trick.
Yeah.
I was like, this is unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this. It just knocked my socks off. So I watched Shawshank Redemption, which was great.
Yeah.
Had a great time, and then immediately went and watched Pulp Fiction from the beginning. And by that point, I'd seen the ending, and I was like, well, it ends with John Travolta and Samuel Jackson walking to the diner. Halfway through the movie, when Vincent Vega gets shot, I'm like, what? Like, all gloves are off now. Like, anything can happen in this movie. And I had never seen dialogue like that.
Mhm.
I had never seen structure like that. I had never seen a Godard film. And I remember afterwards, like, I don't know how you research things back then. I must have gone to the library and been like, what does a band apart mean?
Yeah.
And finding out all about Godard and getting books about Godard. I wrote a letter at that point I was writing screenplays. I wrote a terrible Pulp Fiction ripoff at the age of 13. Sent it I found the address of a band apart at the library,
Mhm.
sent it to them, and was like, will you executive produce this movie? And they sent back, at that point, everything was by post, and they sent a letter back saying, we don't accept unsolicited submissions. But it had the band apart letterhead on it, and I still have that. That's
wow.
I was so excited just to have that letter. To me, that was like equivocal to a literal letter from Quentin Tarantino.
He saw Pulp Fiction like they would have like in the 40s where people just went in the middle
Yeah,
of a
exactly.
film.
It was
Yeah.
exactly that. Yeah,
That's
because I would just
amazing.
go spend all day. So sometimes you're like, I've got 40 minutes before the movie I want to see. I'm just gonna, for better or worse, see a little bit of something else.
And you probably would have read Shawshank. You probably would have read, if you were a Stephen King reader, you may have.
That's a great. I either read it before. I think I had read that one already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had read that one already.
And then all of a sudden, something very new. And then when Quentin came out with that, he was like, it was on MTV. It was like a new version of a filmmaker, really.
Yes,
For
all of a
everyone.
sudden, and there was I mean, I think it was shortly this afterwards, but like a CD-ROM, like Steven Spielberg movie maker. I can't remember what it was called, and Quentin Tarantino was in that. Like he was
Yeah.
everywhere, and Yeah,
He was acting in it, right? And
yeah,
you
yeah.
make him do,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
And he was,
Crazy.
I mean, it was really that was one of those. Again, let's not put it up there yet because there
Okay.
might be other things but that is a clear, point of delineation in my cinephiledom.
Do you remember, just in your many years of going there, was there the greatest audience you've ever been involved in? Like, was there a show where the place was going crazy or people were crying, or the best audience?
I know what you did last summer too. I still know what you did last summer, opening night. I was working at the movie theater at that point. That audience was into that movie. It was
That's
insane.
awesome.
And it was like the biggest theater it was the AMC Grand
Mhm.
where I worked, the first megaplex in America. And it was in the biggest screen, Theater 24. And it played like gangbusters. I've not seen that movie since, but it tore the roof off.
So you were working at the theater. What were you doing at the theater?
I was a projectionist.
Oh,
Well, I
you're a
worked my way
projectionist.
up to it. Like I went there with the intent. As soon as I turned 16, I was like, I want to be a projectionist because I'd heard that Owen Wilson, also from Dallas, had worked as a projectionist in AMC theater. So I was like, great, that's the path to take. And so,
Apparently it
yeah,
is.
I applied as soon as I turned 16.
Yeah.
I applied, and then they were like, "Do you want to go see a movie?" And I was like, "Well," when I turned in the application and went for my interview, and they're like, "You can stay and watch a movie if you want." So I saw Albert Brooks's Mother and Eddie Murphy's Metro while turning in my job application.
That's
The process to becoming a projectionist took about maybe like a year.
Mhm.
And so I did the concession stand, box office, ushering. But then by that summer, maybe it was less than a year. But by that summer, I was working my way up into the projection booth.
So it was film, plattered film at this point
Yeah.
at this theater?
And the first print that I ever built up myself was Godzilla, the '98 Godzilla, which was I still have a great deal of affection for because of that.
So this was post changeover, plattered,
Yeah,
and sometimes they could go awry if you didn't put them in correctly. The whole film would pop
with
out.
the print throw is what they would call it. Or
Yeah.
there was the brain wrap in the middle, but then a print throw, which was the worst nightmare you could ever have.
Did you ever have that happen? I've heard so many
Yeah.
projections say it just pops out.
Yeah.
You're like in a room.
And then it's just like spaghetti that you have to just
Yeah.
I mean, there were so many instances of like for one reason or another of having to babysit a print. I remember Titanic was immense,
Mhm.
one of the biggest prints that and Return of the King, I think were the biggest ones I ever dealt with. And because the temperature was sometimes too warm, whatever, the static electricity would build up. And if there was too much static electricity in the print, the film strips would stick together as it got pulled into the brain, causing a
Mhm.
brain wrap. So you would just have to sit there with gloves on, with your hand in the print for the entire running time.
Oh God.
And for Titanic,
Oh God.
you're just sitting there like this. And it's just like, oh my goodness. But I have nothing but fond memories. One time when I think it was the first Lord of the Rings movie opened, it was selling out so much that they canceled almost everything else. And we ran one print through 12 projectors.
Wow.
Or like, probably half a mile of projection
So
booth.
all the rooms are connected.
They're all connected. And you could interlock 4 projectors at a time. And then beyond that, it had to be manual. So you could hit start on one projector and would start the next 4 in the right timing so that each one you wouldn't get a jam. But then to go beyond that, you'd have to run and just like manually be like, all right, hit start right now. And really it was like looking at the tension in the film and being like, right when it's about here, okay, we're good.
Wow. So you were a professional projectionist, what, 16, somewhere around?
16 to 23. Like I was happy doing
Wow.
that. I did it for way too long, or maybe not long enough.
Yeah.
It's still, I had no thought about, the need to make a living. I was making,
Mhm.
I remember when I made it up to $6 an hour and I was like, wow, this is cool. I'm getting $6 an hour to do this. This is great.
So I Know What You Did Last Summer. Was that the audience award? Were you projecting then, or is that
There's got to be a better one. I mean, no shade on that movie.
No shade on that movie,
But,
but that was one of the best that you'd witnessed, and you witnessed from the booth.
yeah, I'm going to go with Dumb and Dumber for the audience. I'm going to go backwards.
Yeah, that's
Because when I think about the great comedies of my time and the great audience engagement, the moments of audience engagement, that it just doesn't stop. It doesn't let up. I rarely have had a movie where I know I'm missing things because I'm crying too hard for laughter. And
Do you have a favorite joke in there? A favorite moment from Dumb and Dumber? I love when he's feeding the dogs, all that, and that just that
yeah.
instant moment where they're all covered in. You're in for a ride.
I mean, as someone who hates vomit scenes, Diarrhea scenes are pretty. So I've got to go with
Yeah.
got to go with the toilet scene.
All right. And so did you go by yourself to
Yeah,
see
that would
Dumb?
have been
And
by
so
myself.
you were by yourself, losing your mind, crying,
Totally.
missing
Yeah,
jokes.
just being like, and I hadn't seen Ace Ventura, so this would have been the second Jim Carrey movie I saw The Mask, which I
Great.
loved,
Yeah.
but then this would have been the second one.
All right. Audience award, Dumb and Dumber.
Great.
That's awesome. All right. So we have now programmed on the David Lowery Film Festival. We got E.T., Willow, The Crow, Dumb and Dumber. So when you go to, what's it called, the Music Warehouse? Is that what-
Sound Warehouse.
Sound
or
Warehouse.
CD Warehouse.
CD Warehouse.
Yeah, one of those things.
So are you did you continue to collect soundtracks or physical media? Do you have that? In your-
Yeah, my 4K collection is getting out of hand, and I recently bought a CD player for the first time in a long time because I just missed it.
Yeah.
And I've been going back through all of those old. The first CD I ever bought was the Fifth Element soundtrack. Second one was Lost Highway, which I also had already had on cassette at that point, and
Who
I've still
did
got
the Fifth Element soundtrack?
them.
Gold, not Gold.
Eric Serra
Oh,
is his
Eric
name.
Yeah.
And he had done a lot of the Bassan movies up until that point.
Uh-huh.
And I loved that opera scene, you know, and like just would play that over and over and over again. So I'm a physical media devotee. I went through a period of trying to like simplify my life where I got rid of a lot of stuff, like all of my old DVDs. So as soon as I got that job at the movie theater, I would go to the mall where there was a Suncoast Media or Suncoast Motion Pictures, whatever it's called, and I would buy just every VHS tape I could get my hands on. And they'd have the widescreen ones. They'd have the letterboxed ones, which by that point I knew were the better Last of the Mohicans was like, I think one of the only movies that was only released letterboxed. And so I spent a year collecting VHS, and then DVD came out, and instantly was like, I think I was the first person in my high school to have a DVD player. Mars Attacks was the very first DVD I bought, and still have it. I hear that's getting a 4K re-release this year, but I will keep my original copy. And yes, so big physical media fan. I pulled back from the minimalist lifestyle, and now I just have stacks of movies everywhere.
My first job was at Suncoast Motion Picture Company.
Thank you.
I remember putting the things, the anti-theft stickers on, and then you have like the $14.99, the $19.99, put them up on the shelves.
Incredible.
It's a great place.
It's a great place.
And
they'd have posters.
Yeah.
I think I bought, going back to The Crow, they sold like a replica of The Ring that said whatever the mantra is from that movie, Love Never Dies. And I wore that for probably 5 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, Suncoast was the best, and I think there's one Suncoast Motion Picture Company left in some mall somewhere. So we're rooting for you to stick around. So you've worked yourself up to become a projectionist. You've been there for around 6 years. You're in your early 20s.
Yeah, all through high school, and then I took a brief leave of absence and realized other jobs sucked, and went back to being a projectionist. And I want to say I was not a good projectionist, nor was I given the space to be a good projectionist, because when you're 16 and you're charged with running 12 to sometimes 24 projectors per shift on your own,
it's a lot.
The quality of exhibition suffers.
Yeah.
And I am apologizing right now to all the people who saw scratch prints or late movies or any other problems that may have befallen their movie-going experience while I was watching over.
Yeah, it's hard to adjust the focus in Cinema 12 when you're in Cinema 1.
Yes.
Yeah. When is the part where you just start to discover like new Hollywood and like these things that Malick and some things that may have shaped you later on? When did that?
To be honest, Netflix helped.
Oh, okay.
Because again, I didn't have the TV and VCR, so I didn't get that home video film school education that so many people did until I was like 16. And then I started voraciously watching as much as I could, but I would see things out of order. So I didn't see Days of Heaven until after I'd seen George Washington, and I'd heard David Gordon Green talking about how much Malick was an influence on him, and that led me to Days of Heaven. But I missed it.
Yeah,
I knew about all of these movies because I had Roger Ebert's movie Home Companion, so I was like voraciously reading about movie history, but I was often very late to seeing some of them. There were always these weird pockets that I didn't see. Scorsese was one that I filled in very quickly. Oddly, Jodorowsky was one where I was like in high school because I'd read Roger Ebert's like glowing review of Santa Sangre, and was like, I have to see this movie. So like the second I found a video store, I think it was Video Update in Irving, Texas, had a copy of it. And I was like, yes, I can finally see this insane film.
So that's a direct connection to your latest, Mother Mary, right? Jodorowsky with kind of a...
Yes. I debated whether or not we should screen it for the cast and crew beforehand. Ultimately decided not to, but so I haven't actually, I just got a new edition of that a couple years ago as well, from one of the sidewalk sales outside of the Arrow, in fact. And and I've seen it once on the big screen, many times on home video, and all of his work. I mean, it really resonated and continues to resonate with me. But I didn't go back and look at it prior to making it. But it's definitely in there.
And I like to think the music scenes in your latest film go back to you on your bicycle, listening to your music.
Yeah.
What is your relationship to sound at a theater? And like the Anne Hathaway scenes of her performance in the latest, like where does that go back to?
I mean, it has to go back to partially just loving I would say my understanding of sound as it relates to cinema begins with the music rather than the sound design. I have now become a student of sound design, but music and the way it functions in movies, going to see Fiddler on the Roof, for example, and the choreography of the camera with the singing, which I wouldn't have picked up on the time. When I go back and look at that movie now, I'm like, unbelievable what's happening. This is incredible. And so musical scores have always had a very front and center place in my movies because of that. And they often function like sound design or function like characters in the movie unto themselves. But I think that all goes back to just that deep love and familiarity with how scores function in movies. It was like the thing that I grabbed onto right away.
Yeah. What makes a great theatrical screening? What does it matter to go to the cinema to see a film?
For me, and this again ties into some of the stuff that's in Mother Mary, it is the communal experience. It is going to see something and feeling something with other people. And I've had great experiences watching movies all alone in the theater. Very recently, in fact, where I was the only person that showed up to something. and that's great too. But it really, I love that. I love the act of sitting in a room with a bunch of people and all experiencing something together. And I think that's why cinema has persisted as an art form the way it has. Why the theater going experience through all of its ups and downs has persisted and has not gone away and is in fact, having resurgence, because that is an undeniable experience. You can't get anything like it. So for me, that's what it's all about.
Because you would be on your bike by yourself, bicycling to these theaters, but then you weren't alone. Like when you were having Dumb and Dumber, everyone agreed with you.
And I'm a very shy person. Like I'm a homebody, but that's a social experience that I can have. And you get the same thing to a certain extent when you go to concerts. And Mother Mary was me trying to capture that feeling of, parts of that movie, of being at a concert and feeling these feelings with thousands of other people who are all feeling the same thing in that one moment.
It's very much a movie about like a private conversation and then
it explodes.
Public. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there anything right now? We have 4 programmed. We still have secret screening, double feature, dream screening, and closing night. Is there anything you immediately want to put up on the board?
No, not yet. Not yet.
All right. So you're a projectionist?
Yeah.
What was the jump then from projecting the film to making the film?
I was trying to make films this entire time.
Yeah, you sent to Band Apart.
Yeah, exactly. I was writing scripts. I didn't have as soon as I turned 16, the 2 things I bought, camcorder, a little SVHS at that point, high 8, and the TV and VCR. And so then I started making things in high school, and class projects were always movies. I was writing scripts. None of them were, worth sharing. Although I think one of the very early ones I made with one of my dad's friends' VHS camera, I made a movie called Poltergeist. The very first thing I ever put on camera, and it stars my brother wrapped in a sheet. And I'm like, oh. So when A Ghost Story came out, we released that through A24 because I was like, it's really important that this be out there.
Yeah, it really is.
But yeah, I was just learning. I was learning about reverse shot, like when you're shooting a conversation, how to shoot that. I was figuring it out on I definitely read books about it, but doing it on your own was how you really learned. And I was always I didn't want to go to film school. I was self-taught on everything, but partially because I'm stubborn, partially because I'm antisocial, and also because I just am impatient and just want to start doing things. And so I didn't go to film school. I decided early on that it wasn't what I wanted to do. I just wanted to make things. And as soon as I got out of high school, I was like, I'm just going to start making movies. And in my head, I was like, I'm going to start making movies on a large scale immediately after high school.
Yeah.
But it took, a long time. But that was the goal. That was
Mhm.
always the goal. And I think I wrote my first feature length script when I was 16, but prior to that, I just was like figuring out how to make a movie last long enough to get to 120 pages.
Yeah.
And same with making things on my little camcorder. It's like figuring out the language of movie making.
You had a cast of what, 8 or 9?
Yeah.
So were
Yeah.
they all in your films?
They were all, all in them. Yeah. Yeah.
When you decided to make films, what was the first time you remember making a film and seeing it projected in a theater? Or do you have any favorite early memories of some of your films being projected in a cinema?
I made like some shorts that got projected at a local film festival, but
Mhm.
they're not my favorite memories because that was when I realized I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I was like, this shouldn't be being shown right now. Like, I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
And it takes away nothing from the pride of having finished it, but realizing when you're seeing it on the big screen, it's like, oh, that's not what I want it to be.
Yeah.
And that's something that still to this day is when I look at my movies and I'm like, what can I learn from this?
Mhm.
I'm much happier with my movies now than I was back then, but I still am always like, oh, like how can I grow from this? What can I take out of this? Rather than just resting on the plateau of having finished something. When I look at them now, I think, okay, I accomplished what I was hopefully seeking to accomplish, but what can I take from that experience? What can I take from what I've put on screen? What can I take from what I'm seeing on the big screen and carry forth into something that's bigger and better or different or more impactful to me? All those things.
Mhm. And so when you're editing, are you imagining an audience? Are they at home or are you imagining them in a theater?
Always in the theater. And this thing that I learned from Walter Murch, not directly, but from his book,
Mhm.
was to, when you got your big monitor or whatever size your monitor is, cut out a little MST3K style silhouette of a couple audience members and just tape it at the bottom of the screen. And that changes everything.
Yeah. You always have your audience.
You always have the audience and you're always imagining it big because they're
Mhm.
little and you're just imagining what it's like to be sitting in this theater dwarfed by an image, which is
Mhm.
the best thing in the world.
Do you remember some of the films? I mean, there's so much beauty and spectacle to your films. Do you remember some of the images that first blew your mind in a cinema to see it that large, that something that was so enchanting?
In some ways, it's movies that I had seen on tape
Mm-hmm.
or on DVD that I was seeing for the first time. 2001 was one of the first movies my grandparents ever showed me prior to Star Wars because they just knew I liked space
Mm-hmm.
and they had a copy of that. And
Oh, you saw 2001 before Star Wars.
yeah,
Interesting.
and my grandfather skipped past the Dawn of Man sequence because he was like, you don't care about that. You just want to get to the spaceships. So years later, I'm like reading again about how movies are made and they're talking about Stuart Freeborn who
Yeah,
did the makeup for that. And all of the ape costumes, like, what? There's no apes in 2001. What are they?
Just Donald
Yeah.
Trump. Yeah.
And so I remember seeing that for the first time on the big screen back in Milwaukee at
Uh-huh.
the Oriental Theater on 70 millimeter
Wow.
and just being, I mean, because it was partially because the images were all familiar to me, but I was seeing them for the first time.
Wow.
And it was a humbling experience.
How old were you saw it on the screen in Milwaukee?
I was late. I mean, I was probably like 30 at that point.
Yeah, so you've gone
so,
back.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an incredible experience to see that movie. I can't believe you watched it before Star Wars.
It was one of those ones that just like, and partially because the narrative is so simple. Like, I
Mhm.
think my grandparents felt like they could just put it on for me and I
Yeah,
could veg
yeah.
out in front of them. And I loved it. Like the scene, one of the most indelible moments is when they're choosing sandwiches on the shuttle to the moon.
Yeah.
And my grandmother would always make the same sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. So we could, as we were watching it at that point, we'd always get sandwiches wrapped in wax paper.
That's amazing. You know, you have a love of like fantasy
Yeah.
and some of these. Were there some other incredible fantasy movies that kind of shaped how you went forward besides, the Willow?
I mean, Lord of the Rings, when those came out, I was a projectionist when they,
Mhm.
I mentioned that when they opened, those definitely changed everything for me
Yeah.
personally, but also I remember one of my wife and I, not our first date, but we watched the first one together very early on in our relationship. Late at night, I screened it for her all by herself at the movie
Yeah.
theater. Trying to think of some of them.
Wait, so you were dating and you were a projectionist?
Yeah,
And so you had we're going to just watch it by ourselves?
I would do that all the time.
Oh, wow. Let's talk more about this. So
I mean, I was eventually fired for sneaking my brother in to see Triplets of Belleville. That's the final. It was like an accumulation, but that was like the final
Yeah.
straw.
Triplets of Belleville is what got you fired from a job?
Yeah, Valentine's Day of 2004. It was. That's why I loved it.
Yeah.
I could just, if something like Titanic was playing
Yeah.
and I didn't have to babysit the print, I would have 3 hours. In fact, I watched Santa Sangre for the first time in the projection booth on the VHS player that they had for children's birthday parties. And so I'd watch other
Kind of
movies,
fitting.
or I would project things for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And on Thursday nights, you would have the tech check where all the new prints would come in and you'd have to screen every single one, which was always a treat.
Yeah.
It always meant that Friday morning in school, I was not present, but we'd be there till 6 a.m. screening prints, and that was so much fun.
That's amazing. Then you'd have to go to school, so you'd be up all night, basically. You wouldn't sleep, or maybe an hour?
Maybe an hour, yeah. But at that age, you don't care.
Yeah, who
Yeah,
cares?
exactly.
Who cares if you're Friday, just kind of...
Who cares about school?
Yeah. And so Lord of the Rings, you watched in the middle of, like, the night?
Yeah, that would have been one definitely that was like a 3, 4 a.m. finish. And I would do what year was it that I watched, like, Amistad and For Richer or Poorer, the Tim Allen Amish comedy, and then there was one other. We do like,
Wow.
and maybe that's I've always loved double, triple features. I love movie marathons, and maybe that was the beginning of it. Was just
Sometimes they're fun when they make no sense like that,
yeah,
too.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so would any of these be the secret screening? Because they are kind of secret.
No, but this does call to mind a double feature,
Okay.
which would have been in summer of '99, one of the most famous summers, and I saw Eyes Wide Shut and The Blair Witch Project.
Oh, wow.
Opening night for both of them. And by that point, Kubrick was a big deal to me. I would have been 16. And so a lot of anticipation for this movie. And we went to see it at the AMC Grapevine Mills 30, which was the first 30-screen movie theater in America. Now reduced to 18. I went back there recently to see One Battle After Another for the 8th time because it was the only place showing it. And it's now 18. I don't know what happened to the other 12. So Eyes Wide Shut, absolutely incredible. Definitely now, I can say I wasn't too young for it, but what I got out of that movie then was very different. As a 16-year-old who had never been in a relationship, and now is like someone in my 40s who's been married for 15 years, I see that movie very differently.
Yeah. There's a through line with the red cloak into your latest, maybe.
That's very true. I mean, Eyes Wide Shut was a movie with Mother Mary that I definitely watched beforehand, and Michaela hadn't seen it yet. Annie had seen it, but not for a long time. But that scene in the bedroom where they are planting the seeds for the rest of the movie, where Nicole Kidman is revealing the hint of infidelity that sends Bill on his journey, his odyssey. That's a scene that's so extended, and you read about how they shot it, and I was like, this feels very apropos for the journey that we are about to go on, because our movie starts pretty much with a 30-minute long scene, and it has its own arcs. It has its own mini narrative within that, and its own structure, its own rhythm. And I was like studying that scene, just trying to figure out what was going on, how they got to where they got to.
Yeah, and that's could happen because you were raised on 2001 as a very small child.
Completely. Yeah.
And then, so did you watch this the same night as Blair Witch?
Yeah. So then we drove across town to the Inwood Theater, where we had tickets to the midnight screening of the Blair Witch, which by that point, maybe I had seen a few movies of that scale. Like I knew about Sundance was already a big deal to me at this point. There had been a few like Mike Figgis films that had maybe been shot on, maybe not. Time Code was like a year later.
There might have been, but they're very small.
Yeah. And so seeing something that felt makeable, that was partially shot on high 8, and that had a budget that, while still vastly higher than any number I could conceive of, especially making $6 an hour, felt doable. All of a sudden, and also it had a website, which was like, oh, this is a way to like tell people about your movie. That really started to click for me.
Now, you were aware that this was a movie. Some people, when they first saw it, weren't aware that it was a movie. You were
I knew,
aware.
yeah.
100%.
I was reading Filmmaker magazine religiously by this point.
And so this was maybe an inspiration too, that you're like, oh, maybe I could shoot like a low budget like this as well?
Yeah. Like definitely that crossed my mind. I never wanted to make a faux documentary, but just the, even just the idea of, at that point, I was still thinking I'll shoot on high 8 and transfer to the 35, but just seeing what that looked like and understanding the aesthetics of that was really impactful to me.
And you said earlier, you have trouble with being afraid during theater
Yeah, it
films.
scared me to death.
This must have frightened you out of your mind.
And I rewatched it when Adam Wingard's film came out. We did a double feature,
Mm-hmm.
and it still worked for me. We watched it with some younger friends who were like children when it came out, and they were like, "This is not scary at all." And I'm like, This is so. What do you mean?"
Yeah, there's nothing scarier than something being vague and you're not
Yeah.
sure, like what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really, it's still, I love. It's one of those movies that, I mean, I enjoy the sequels,
Mhm.
but it's lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
You really can't do that again.
And
So it was important for me to realize, like, I can write a Pulp Fiction ripoff when I'm 13, but I can't go make a Blair Witch ripoff when I'm 16.
All right, let's put that up as the double feature, Eyes Wide Shut and the Blair Witch.
Yep.
Which order?
I would go that order.
That order.
Yeah.
Let's do it. All
Yep.
right. So the double feature is the Blair Witch Project and Eyes Wide Shut. All right, we have E.T., Willow, The Crow, Blair Witch Project, Eyes Wide Shut, Dumb and Dumber. That leaves us with secret screening, dream screening, and closing night. Is there anything you immediately want to play on the board?
For the secret screening,
Mm-hmm.
2002, I come to Los Angeles for the very first time and have no car. I'm just wandering around the streets and discover the ArcLight.
Oh, wow.
I had mentioned that I was a voracious fan of Filmmaker Magazine, a reader of Filmmaker Magazine, and prior to that trip, there was a cover story on Matthew Barney's Cremaster 3, which I was like, what is this movie?
Yeah.
How do I see this? The whole model by which he makes his films makes it very hard to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I get to LA, I wander by the ArcLight, and I see Cremaster 3 is playing. I wander in, watched it, and was like, how do I make movies like this? How can I don't want to copy him, but I was like, how can I do things like this? There's
Yeah.
no dialogue in the movie. It is so, it was again, one of those mind expanding cinematic experiences. And I saw it projected a few more times. Every now and then it'll pop up, but I've since become an immense fan of Matthew Barney's work. And I go see everything I possibly can. When he did River of Fundament here in LA, that was like one of the highlights of that year, was going to that 6-hour-long screening. It was incredible.
Because they're fine art, they can only be projected.
Yes.
They can't be distributed. We did, 2 years ago, I think we did some of the screenings. It's also a little bit like Peter Greenaway, who you got to meet to the Cinematheque.
Indeed. And there's a lot of parallels between their work, I would say. A lot of choreography, a lot of sense of dance and of fine art. And all of that stuff also comes through in Mother Mary, I think. I think I've thought a lot about Greenaway for Mother Mary, but also a lot about Matthew Barney.
All right, we're going to put the Cremaster up?
I'm going to put Cremaster 3 up because I think that is a great entry point. So it's a secret screening. No one knows what they're getting into. It's not going to completely, if I did River of Fundament, I don't know if anyone would come back to the rest of the festival. But River of Fundament, I would love to see that again.
All right, let's put it up on the board. All right, we're nearing the end. We've got E.T., Willow, The Crow, Cremaster 3, Blair Witch Project, Eyes Wide Shut, Dumb and Dumber. We're left with closing night, dream screening, still playable, Pinocchio, 2001, Pulp Fiction, Lord of the Rings. Is there anything you want to go to?
Oh, I'm trying. I mean, they all deserve a spot.
Yeah.
They really do. Maybe for the dream screening, I would go to, I could pick opening night of Star Wars. Hard to
At the Chinese?
at the Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's
Let's
do
do
it.
that. That's important to me.
We're going to opening night of Star Wars at the Chinese. We had a projectionist who projected there. And there was people hanging off the rafters.
Yeah.
And then they contractually had to show William Freakin' Sorcerer, which is one of the greatest films
Yes,
ever.
I know.
They all disappeared,
yeah,
and then they all came back.
That lore is, again, William Freakin' Sorcerer. I'm making a list of the best first reels of all time. Right up there.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But okay, we're going back in time. Star Wars, first screening
Yeah.
at the Chinese.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Do I sit with anybody?
Okay, so we're going back in time. It's Star Wars. Again, it's your dream screening. You can bring anyone from the future there. What's the perfect scenario? How old are you?
I would bring my family.
Yeah.
That's what I would bring. I'd bring all of them. My mom, my dad, my siblings. That would be really special.
What age would you all want everyone to be? Or is it now or then?
What a paradoxical quantum.
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm 7 years old.
Yeah.
I would take me at 7,
Uh-huh.
which would mean a lot of my siblings didn't exist yet. So all of us at whatever our platonic childhood age would have been. So mine would have been 7.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say they're all that age, and my mom and dad at that age too. That's
Just a
what I'd
group
go.
of 7s.
A group of 7-year-olds. No, my mom and dad would be my parents at the age of
Oh,
7.
when you were 7,
Yeah.
their age. Not
Yeah.
everyone's 7.
Not my siblings are all between the ages of 5 and 10.
All right, let's go back to the Chinese.
This is very weird, but that is like I'm just trying to think of like what's the platonic image of my childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Free action figures to everyone. All right, we're at closing night of the David Lowery Film Festival. What is going to close? What do you want people to remember going home from your festival?
This is an impossibility. This is really, really difficult because it's the most important one and you don't want to get it wrong. I think it's important to go out on a high note.
Mm-hmm.
And I am thinking of one of the greatest high notes of the past 10 years for me, cinematically speaking, was Mad Max Fury Road. It was on my Sight and Sound top 10.
Nice.
And there are movies that perhaps are more like emotionally meaningful to me. Well, maybe there's not. Mad Max Fury Road is incredibly emotionally meaning to me. But it is a movie I can't stop returning to. And it, again, sort of recalibrated my understanding of what movies could do and how they could work and what was accomplishable. And also, when you're making movies and feeling like everything is going wrong, it's a really helpful movie to turn to see how something that feels disastrous in the moment can become, if you just stick to your guts, stick to your guns, and really follow that vision, it can still manifest into something truly extraordinary.
And you see it in IMAX?
100% IMAX.
All right, we're going to end with Mad Max Fury Road. All right, we have all 8 slots ready. We're almost to the end, but is there any changes, any additions, anything we want to do at the David Lowery Film Festival?
I think my heart is telling me, as a fan of Disney films, as a maker of Disney films, it would be wrong not to put Pinocchio on opening night.
That
A
makes
double
total
feature
sense.
of Pinocchio and E.T. Perfect.
First Love.
Yep. And then at a certain point, I realized movies I wanted to see that weren't playing in Dallas, I could travel to see them. One of the formative ones for me was traveling to Chicago to see Satan Tango, the Bellatar film. And that was in 2007. I would not subject people to a double feature of Cremaster 3 and Satan Tango because, it's a lot. You should definitely go see Satan Tango, but only on the big screen. Only on the big screen. And so instead, I'm going to go with a slightly shorter movie that I flew to see at its New York premiere, or New York opening weekend, I should say. It wasn't the premiere, which was David Lynch's Inland Empire. And so Cremaster 3 followed by Inland Empire.
Beautiful.
Their brains will melt, and it'll be glorious.
And is there any other changes that you want to make? The double feature Untoward Dream screening?
So here's my other tempting thought, was closing on Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And now I'm thinking Portrait of a Lady on Fire followed by Mad Max Fury Road.
Okay.
That's a pretty good double feature.
It's a good double feature.
Let's do that.
Yeah, okay.
Let's do that.
That's a quite female protagonist double feature there.
And that was a movie that, much like Mad Max Fury Road, where I went to see it and instantly went back and saw it again. I saw it in Vancouver while I was prepping a film.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I just was like, I don't want to go back to the production office. I'm just going to keep watching this movie. And I did. and I saw it 3 times, and then COVID hit and everything shut down. But it was revelatory to me, and it's become a very important film. Another one that I returned to a lot, and another one that we talked about a lot as we were preparing for Mother Mary. That's a very quiet movie, very understated. Mother Mary's very maximalist, and there's a ton of dialogue. But nevertheless, we turn to that often for, sometimes just for comfort.
I think we're at the end. We're going to add Pinocchio. We're going to add Inland Empire. We're going to add Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Yeah.
Was there any alterations to the Dream screening that you wanted to make before we end the David Lowery Film Festival?
Yeah, we have to make it that double feature with Sorcerer.
Okay, so then what happens here? Your family's all there. They're all 7.
So most of my family will leave. I think all of them will leave.
Okay.
They're happy. I want to stay in the theater. I don't know what's playing next, but I'm excited to find out. And I see Sorcerer, and I'm maybe I somehow age rapidly to like being about 13 or 14 in this moment, but regardless, I want to be there to see that transition happen,
Yeah.
to see that shift in Hollywood, to
Yeah.
see that shift with the audience. And also, it's very representative of me and the breadth of my tastes and the things I love and want to embrace as a cinephile, but also to make as a filmmaker. I want to make movies that made me feel like Star Wars did. I also want to make movies that make me feel the way Sorcerer did.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, that's perfect. All right, we're adding Pinocchio. We're adding Inland Empire. We are adding Sorcerer and Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
This sounds fantastic.
All right, that's the David Lowery Film Festival. Thank you so much for programming this with us. Your film, Mother Mary, is in theaters now. Everyone go see it. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you so much. This is a pleasure.
Yeah. The American Cinematheque podcast is produced and edited by Victoria Alejandro. Mike Cuenca edits and produces our video. Stephanie Cervantes is our marketing manager. Our theme music is by Gelberg. And I'm your host, Grant Moniger. Thanks to everyone who makes this show possible. The American Cinematheque operates the Aero, Egyptian, and Las Villas 3 theaters in Los Angeles with programming nationwide. The American Cinematheque is a 501c3 nonprofit. If you'd like to hear more, donate, become a member, or program your own AC Podcast Film Festival, head over to AmericanCinematheque.com.